And good morning, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Pass and Half Sports Show. I'm your host, James Scorza, with you, and with me, as always, is a group of companions on this very important Saturday. Joey Marks joining us here today once again. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Philadelphia. We're going back to the Super Bowl. There is relevant sports talk to be had, and the Philadelphia Eagles are the main headline. I am ready for this game, and I will echo what you said before we went on air, James. I wish it were tomorrow and not a week from tomorrow.
Yep.
But later on this episode, we're going to be joined by our good friend Al Zaffiri. He's going to give us his breakdown of the NFC Championship game and give us a little bit of a look towards what to expect with the Super Bowl coming up. And the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs facing off once again. It's going to be an interesting and entertaining game nonetheless. I can tell you that. The NFL got what they wanted. That I
Yep.
can tell you that now.
Yep, that they did. And also, before we go any further, we want to thank our sponsors for this very important program. Our friends over at sportsmemorabilia.com, rallyhouse.com, and our friends over at ticketnetwork.com. So, Joey, we got a busy, unpackful Saturday on our hands. So, simply put, where do we begin?
Well, we got to begin with that drubbing that the Commanders took last week. We got to
Right?
break down a little bit of that because honestly, from what I have heard, that was the most lopsided, high-scoring NFC Championship game there has ever been. And the Eagles, from beginning to end, on all three phases, I felt like we're not gonna let you come into our house and do a damn thing. You can have all the hype, you can have all the flash bulbs, cameras, and everything on you, Jaden Daniels. But guess what? You're just not good enough. And I've said this last week, and I'll say it again. Like, the Commanders came in as the darlings, and into the playoffs, and you would think that that would carry them through to the Super Bowl, but the Eagles have been and were the most talented team on that field, and it didn't just show in one phase; it showed in all three phases. We could break down that even Saquon didn't even have like his best game, but
Right.
Hurts did. The defense did. There's a stat that's floating out there that since the bye week, they have had 27 turnovers.
Wow.
That is astonishing. And about more than 65 to 75% of them have been fumbles. Like, so they're not, waiting for the opposing quarterback to make a mistake. They're going on the attack.
Yep.
And, it's amazing to me because, I got to tell you, we have been waiting for. I remember last year where we got on your Georgia Bulldogs boys,
Yep.
and
Yep.
rightfully so. But they all came out this season, and especially in last week's game, and basically said, "This is our house. You're not coming in our house and doing a thing."
You're not coming
Uh,
out of the Philadelphia and leaving here with the win.
yeah, and I mean, like, that was so convincing
Oh,
of
yeah.
a win. I want to get your take. Like, what were either the one to two things that you took out of that game the most? Like, what impression did it leave on you at the end?
This team is just so dominant, man. I gotta say right now. I mean, you think about what happened like the last previous time with Washington, and obviously they lost. I mean, you lost your quarterback and you lost your safety due to an ejection and all that. But this was like a statement game. This was like, you beat us once, we beated you once, but now it's time for us to kick your ass now. So for me, I was so ecstatic about that. It's just, I mean, early on in that game, and then they were going down the field. Even though they only had a field goal out of it, I was like saying, you still got to stop Saquon Barkley. And what do you know? A 60 yard run that just went. I mean, after that, I said to myself, that was the. I mean, I was at the NFC Championship game back in 2017 when that Patrick Robinson interception happened and
Hmm.
the floodgates happened. I said to myself, that was the tone setter. That was the
Yep.
tone setter. And after that, everything after that was just like, I mean, 50 burger. I mean, when would you ever say a 50 burger in an NFC Championship game, let alone your rival?
Yeah. A team that's familiar with you, a team that has got tape on you. You know, we talk about it all the time. Like, if you have a player, a quarterback, or some a scheme that's not been on tape, then you uh have difficulty against a team that's very familiar with you because they know what your reads look like. They know what your lineup, how your formations look like, so they know how your scheme kind of looks.
Yep.
There's some familiarity with that. The way
And
that I saw it, Kellen Moore threw some wrinkles into it.
yeah, didn't he?
With
Didn't?
Dallas Goddard, jet sweep, and the idea that I think Kellen uh, gave Jalen a little bit more of the reins, especially in the playoffs. And this is what I mean. That that Saquon run that you referred to, the first play of the game
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yeah,
Eagles,
that's the amazing thing. It was the first play of the game. It was not like a couple of minutes into a quarter or a couple minutes into the. It was
that
just like
was
legitimately
the
right
first
that
the first play on offense for the Eagles after the Commanders went down 18 plays,
it's
converted
unbelievable.
converted two third downs, converted two fourth downs, and in one fell swoop, we just took your heart. Like, we just
Yeah.
took it away. But that play wasn't even a run play to Saquon.
No.
Jalen checked into it
Yeah.
because he saw something on the defense that said, I don't like that. Let's do this. And he has been more, people call him the game manager. I'm gonna go and put another little nickname to Jalen Hurts. He's the field general
Yep.
because he sees it. He sees the defense and he's starting to understand. And this is why now we may lose Kellen Moore, but this is why it's important for some continuity on offense,
Hmm.
for an offensive play call or offensive playbook. Because as Jalen gets to know the playbook, you can tell he he is like, okay, let's do this. I don't want to do this. Let's do this. I see the defense. I want to do this. I want to switch into this. And you could see that he's getting more comfortable with it. Now, I know that everyone's going to be like, yeah, but he's still only throwing for like 120 some yards. Okay, but if you have Saquon Barkley doing what he's doing, I'm not throwing the ball either.
Right.
I'm just saying it that way.
Right.
Like, why the hell would I go away from the bell cow that is Saquon Barkley, potentially, well, not potentially, the best running back in the league this year, and potentially one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL,
It's
because
amazing.
he's having such a season that we're not going to, the offensive line is not going to implode. Like, they're not all going to walk off and be like, I'm done with the Eagles.
No.
This offensive line is so stacked. This roster is so stacked with players that are coming back year after year after year. Now, look, it's difficult to get to a Super Bowl, but it's also difficult to sustain talent. So, Howie said, I can't control whether they get to the Super Bowl every year, but I can
Hmm.
control keeping this talent on the roster. So,
Yeah.
that is a big part of that NFC Championship game, at least in my mind. The Philadelphia Eagles basically said to everyone in the NFL, "We're coming for what's ours."
Right.
And no one, not the darlings, not the Jaden Daniels, not the, there was a poll on ESPN before the NFC Championship game of who you think the top 10 quarterbacks of the NFL this season were, and Jaden Daniels made the top 5. And I just felt like, okay, That's fine. He had a great year. No disrespect, he did. But this guy's going to come back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he did.
And
And
he
look,
did.
they didn't necessarily lose the game because of Jaden Daniels, but he didn't carry them through the day. I
No.
mean, there was a guy, he showed his age. And like that made a difference to me. That's my takeaway, is that someone like Jalen Hurts led his team. So, he doesn't have to be the rah-rah guy, but you don't have to hear him. You just see his demeanor, and you don't want to disappoint the general. You
No.
don't want to go back and be like, "Yep, I screwed up."
Right.
Like, I get it. Look, there's a reason why someone like Landon Dickerson was barely walking
Right.
and going to line up as a center to protect his quarterback.
Right. Right.
You protect the general. That's respect.
That's
You
nothing
can't
but respect right there, man.
you can't buy that anywhere. Like, there are players that would be like, "Nah, I'm hurt. I'm gonna sit down."
Yeah, like the one across the street will probably chicken out probably. So
Right. So Landon was like, "No, I got you. I got you one. Don't worry, I got you." And
you,
and so like that's the difference
yeah,
in how I feel like Jalen kind of contributes to this team. And again, I mean, Saquon didn't have the world beating game. He had the best play, but he didn't have the world beating game. And I got to say this too. Zach Bond, please,
salute,
Howie,
salute, man.
please resign Zach Bond, please.
Yeah.
I will
Um,
stand outside your office with the sign. I will take up a GoFundMe for Zach Bond. I will do
oh my
whatever I
god.
have to do to keep that man in Eagles green, because I'm going to go out and say this. He's the most locked down linebacker, middle linebacker we have had since Trotter. And that's saying a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah. Before we go any further, we got a lot of comments here, so it's a busy
Yep.
Saturday morning.
Let's hit
Mitch
'em.
Kopsky joins us and says good morning to us. What's going on, Mitch? How you doing, buddy? We also got another one here. It's a hardcore for all, says that home field advantage was huge on that
Yep.
game on Sunday. I do agree 100%. He said but basically said it was like deflating for the Commanders after that game. Also, this was a very good comment here too. He says that, well, the Chiefs will have to sell out and stop the run. They want Jalen to toss the ball over that rush, so that's also good too. And this is another astounding stat. I don't know if it's a. I mean, it's probably a little bit of a setback, but he says yesterday he had a slight groin pull. They say, but I don't know if it's anything major or anything like that. But I don't. I
Ooh.
mean, I think for sure. I think it's just probably just resting because he's been playing a lot the last few weeks too. And also, Mitch Kovsky says pay Zach Bond ASAP. So I agree with that too.
Well, who had the slight groin pull? Jalen
Uh,
or Saquon?
I don't know if it was Bond. I think he said Bond had the setback, had a little bit of a setback yesterday, so it's a slight groin pull.
But give him. He'll be fine. And
Yeah,
these guys.
I'm not worried about
It
it.
reminds me so
Yeah, he
much.
said Bond. Yeah, Bond. Yeah,
Yeah, it reminds me so much of
thanks.
2017 that these guys just keep next man up. I mean, Oren Burks,
Mm-hmm,
like, this is a guy who had a couple plays in the NFC Championship game, and he was in for N'Kobe Dean.
mm-hmm.
Like, this is, part of it. And then you got to think, okay, Steam, like, we had him come in and play guard, and he
Right,
did well. And like,
did very well.
I get it. It's cliche, but it's the truth. Next man up mentality. And if you all like stay ready, you never have to worry about getting ready. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference. And this team from top to bottom has stayed ready. And that's a
They're
credit.
just like locked in, Joe. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, they're ready for this. Even my dad brought up a couple nights ago. He says they're made for this. They're just like built for this. They're made for this, and they're just basically just playing. I mean, the one thing I was really astounded about too is that they still got to stop Saquon Barkley. That's the one thing about it. It's like you think about, I mean, Steve Spagnuolo, like, and everybody's like, oh, you got to look at Spagnuolo's defense. Didn't we like beat the Chiefs with Spagnuolo's defense like once before up at Arrowhead last year,
Yes.
or did we put up like
You-
or 35 points again in
yeah.
Super Bowl 57? I mean, like it's like Spagnuolo is not Bud Carson or Buddy Ryan here. Let's
Right.
not go crazy here, but like it's just that like he is like. I mean, you guys still got to stop Saquon Barkley, is what I'm saying, too.
There's two things that I want to bring up that Jason Kelsey brought up on the morning show a couple of days ago,
Right.
and two I think are really profound, and I think they're kind of being lost in the sauce here. Is yes, Spags is a great defensive coordinator. He schemes up different things, and it's a chess match for the offensive lineman. Kelsey even said, like, I hated going against him because he would try to fool me. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel really horrible if I felt like I got fooled. And a couple times I did. But I always came with the mentality that I was going to try and do more to outdo Spags. You had to kind of read what he was going to do and react appropriately.
Right.
That being said, you're right. We beat the Chiefs last year in Arrowhead in a really bad weather
Weather
game.
like game. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was one thing. Number two, the other thing that people who criticize Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley technically wouldn't have the kind of season he's had if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts. Because when
Right.
he runs the RPO option, you don't know if he's keeping it or giving it to Saquon, but God forbid he gives it to Saquon and the offense or the defense, I should say, just goes and follows Jalen. You
Right.
give Saquon an inch, he takes a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference is that I feel like this team, and you're right, and your dad's right about how they're built for this. I think a lot of that has to do with, and people might chuckle, the core values that Nick Sirianni has put in place.
Right.
Like we could sit here and make fun of Nick all we want. That's fine. He's good to kind of have a chuckle at and whatnot. That's fine. But like it or not, Nick Sirianni is doing stuff that other head coaches have not been able to do. He's doing things in such a way where these players are buying into it. And people can dismiss Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni because of the level of talent that's on this team. But guess what? You have to do something with that talent.
Right.
The Boston Celtics back in the day when they had Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Al Horford and all, they were quote unquote the next champions of the NBA, and they didn't win it.
It
And
took them
they,
a long time to get back to the championship too.
yeah,
Without Kyrie too. Yeah, you're right.
right. But they were just because they had that talented of a roster,
Mm-hmm.
they were already crowned NBA champions when they didn't even get close. So for my takeaway is the Eagles could have had this stacked roster and they could have just not made any headway. They could have been bounced in the wild card if they rested on their laurels. If their coach just said, the talent will just win the day."
Yep.
If the coach and the quarterback did that, we probably wouldn't be sitting here now. But
Yeah.
the coach and the quarterback believe in core values that all the other players in that locker room also believe in.
Yeah, and also before we go any further, we got a guest here joining us here today. Al Zaffiri joins us once again today. What's going on, brother? How you been?
What's up, gentlemen? How we doing?
Good, man. Good.
What's up, Al? We're going back to the Super Bowl. Hard to believe, but we
Right.
are, and it's exciting. Wanted to get your take on, first off, what you thought of the NFC Championship game.
What didn't I think? I mean, if you're not excited about that game, you better check your vitals because you might be dead, my friend. It's listen, it was it was what I don't want to say we expected, but like what we knew could happen. But you were being tentative before you would say, yeah, that was going to happen. I mean, listen, let's be honest. I'm not looking forward to playing Jaden Daniels for the next, years to come, twice a year.
Right.
He's showing to be a really good, young player. We'll find that out next year and the year coming, because you always say it takes a couple of years for a player to develop before we really know what you have in front of him. Make sure he's not a one-hit wonder. I mean, that's what makes guys like Patrick Mahomes, who we'll see, in 8 days,
Right.
really good, because he's never had that problem. It's always been, he's been good from the get, and he's always, no matter what year, he could change his game. He can't, he's not figured out very easily. So that's what makes an elite quarterback like Tom Brady. But sure. Jaden Daniels, I know some Commanders fans wanted to put him there, but he's not there yet. But I mean, it just goes to show you that everything, it maybe a lot of it kind of stemmed from last year, the taste that was left in the fans' mouth from the end of the 23 season, watching them just implode going to Tampa. I mean, I remember even saying, I don't even want them to play that game. I watched it, but I begrudgingly watched that Tampa Bay game because I didn't want them to win. I honestly wanted that team to lose. I'm like, if they win, it just validates what they did, and I don't want that to happen. Right. So we all came in here very tentative, kind of clutching our pearls a little bit here. But in this sense, the team has every chance they've had has showed that they have the ability to be a 1-2-3 punch that really is not seen very often in the NFL or in sports generally at this point.
Yeah. So I want to get your take on going forward about the Jalen Hurts' performance in the NFC Championship game. This is a guy who's been highly scrutinized in this season by a lot of different pundits. And, one of the comments that he had made in the post game was, "Coach finally let me out of my straitjacket." So my question to you is, what was your impression of Jalen Hurts' performance in the NFC Championship game? And what do you think he meant by "Coach finally let me out of the straitjacket"?
Well, let's start about his performance. I mean, I've never disliked Jalen. I was never as critical as a lot of people have been of Jalen. I always just, kind of wondered consistency with him. But the man has always come up big when big needed to happen. And that's what you want from your quarterback. I don't care how good you are. We've seen regular season stat patterns, Lamar Jackson, got people coming out of the woodwork just trying to blast him still to this day after what they saw. He's one of those guys who just feels never going to get the accolades, the flowers, the love that he really should get from his peers. Listen, one of my one person I could not stand in the NFL was a former Carolina quarterback, guy who thought he was Superman. So he's sitting there running his mouth now because Jalen Hurts is turning out to be everything he should have been, everything that people thought he was capable of doing. And now he's running his mouth that if he was in the AFC, they would never be as good as they are. Jalen's 14-1 versus the AFC in the last 3 years. So just take that for what it's worth. Everybody's going to listen. Everybody has an opinion. The old saying is, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a-holes, and they all smell the same. You know what I mean? It's just in the end all be all is what happened? What does it come out? And that's why this game leading up here, this Super Bowl is more than just, oh, cool, we get another Super Bowl. We get to finally say we have multiple Super Bowl championships. So all those, Commanders fans, Giants fans, Dallas fans can start to, sweat it out a little bit more.
Sure.
But it's also, I think, what we're about to see is if they win this game, dominance. This team is going to become a dominant team for years to come. And I was listening to you guys earlier. Young guys, a lot of talent, and Howie, I used to be really rough on Howie. I mean, I was very rough on Howie for a while, and rightfully so. I'm not taking back what I said about him then, because then he was proving me right. Then he started wising up and just doing what we all really asked him to do is, look at the SEC, look at, NFL-ready teams and see, what can we why can't we pick from some teams that are ready to go? And he started doing that. And then he started to help, is the coordinators, like with Zach Bond, I'm looking at my Zach Bond jersey. I mean, how often do we often say that? A 1-year contract guy who, a linebacker. Well, when was the last time we bought a linebacker's jersey? So, and then now they're finding the diamond in the rough, and they find the right guys to put things together. It was always just Jeff Stoutland did go wrong, but now you see Vic Fangio do his stuff. You've seen a lot of the other coordinators, Clint Hurdle doing his stuff with the D line. Let's be honest, a lot of guys coming into this season really didn't, shake anybody at all, and really took those guys, galvanized them, and have made one stout D line, and has been for the whole year for the most part. Jalen Carter is Baby Rhino for a reason, because he does look like a Baby Rhino wreaking havoc out there. So what I mean is, like, it's definitely, this team is about, if they win this, it's not just, I said, winning the Super Bowl, which is awesome, and that's what we want. But I think it's also about asserting your dominance in the NFL. And this team is very young. I mean, we forget how old Jalen Hurts is. There's guys who've been in the league less than Jalen Hurts who are older than Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, you have that. You have Devontae Smith, who's very young. A.J. Brown is still in his prime. The O-line is fairly young, except for maybe Lane Johnson. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to get ahead of into the offseason, but I think the right tackle of the future will be starting to be looked for. They're going to do the same thing they did with Cam Jurgens and Jason Kelsey, and kind of get a guy who they think could be the next heir apparent. And again, that team is made of a bunch of Iron Men, just Iron Men. The guys, like, listen, one guy gets hurt.
Yeah, I absolutely
gets hurt. What was that, Joe?
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I absolutely agree with that, because, like we brought up prior to you coming on, guys that, Jalen Hurts has been known as, like, the game manager to some people, but I actually want to give him a different kind of nickname to that, and call him the field general, because, a general is protected by his captains, by his soldiers, and Landon Dickerson could barely walk. And he still was like, nah, I'm going to go out there and protect my general. Nah, I'm going to go out there and protect one. Don't worry about that. And, like, that says a lot. And then Cam Jurgens doing the same thing, battling through injuries. These guys, they want to protect the guy that is going to help them best succeed. And I felt like that was almost on display at the NFC Championship Game. The one thing I want to kind of move towards is the Super Bowl. So we're going back to the Super Bowl. We're facing the same team we faced before. What's different this time in your mind that might give us the advantage over the Chiefs?
Well, I can start with the simplest, most glaring difference is Saquon Barkley. I mean, we've had some good running backs, a great stout O-line, and that's, again, how we learn and going, no, listen, we had some really good running backs, guys who actually had problems staying healthy, DeAndre Swift, and they couldn't, now they come with us, they're healthy, they're running behind this line, and they're just racking up yards and just looking really well. What happens? We have a generational talent like Saquon Barkley, and he is just wreaking havoc. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles and Saquon Barkley have literally revitalized their running back position. The RB1 position, let's be honest, was kind of taking the back seat for a while. Guys they were interchangeable. Nobody was signing long contracts. Nobody was getting big numbers, yada, 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 all that kind of stuff. Now, I think that'll be changing for the next few years. I mean, between them and the Ravens, they've showed that how important an RB1 of that caliber can be. So that's number one. Number two, we just talked about it a moment ago, linebacker play, man. We haven't had much linebacker play to talk about. I mean, we've always tried to get excited about the little ones, like just little things just to show excitement, because we just have, again, Howie wouldn't spend money on RB1. They wouldn't spend money. They definitely weren't going to spend money in the linebacker room. So it's just always kind of like, we're always going to be doing this. We're always going to be doing this. So again, give Howie his flowers. Here's a guy who learned from his mistakes. What do we want champions to do? When you make a mistake, you learn from those mistakes. Right. You're able to adjust on the fly and make up for things. That's what champions do. Because even Patrick Mahomes, the great Patrick Mahomes, makes mistakes. But when he makes mistakes, he goes out and makes up for them, right? So that's what makes greatness great, is that you can easily forget about the mistakes and move on to the next thing. Well, that's what Howie was doing. I mean, he put money into a linebacker crew. Like maybe on paper when we first saw it this season, wasn't right. Wasn't ringing anybody's bell in any which way. But Zach Bond has just lit up. And our Georgia Bulldog friend James, I know.
Yep,
health
brother.
is always an issue, but I know you were the most excited guy because we were on the draft coverage together.
Yep,
they drafted him 3rd round. And we were excited. And the one thing that's haunting this poor guy is injuries and health, but he had just really stepped up. And then Oren Burks. Look at Oren Burks now. Here's a guy that just pulled in off the streets who's worked with the team. He did play in the Super Bowl last year with San Fran. Not saying he doesn't have the ability to do it, but this guy was just hanging around on the streets. They pulled him up, and he played like he's definitely number one. He's battling for a job. Let's be honest. Let's call for that. Not just with the Eagles, but for whoever's going to be the next team. Right. If he wins the Super Bowl, that's going to land him a job for next year. No problems. So I would say those are the two major differences. I mean, you have the O-line for the most part. It's just some different pieces. You had A.J. Brown, you had Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts has always been really good. I mean, listen, he's had his hit and miss moments. But guess what? There's so much ball that can go around. There's only so many scores that can be scored in a game. So what I think makes him great more than anything else is that he understands that it's not you can't do it, Jalen. And it goes back to the original question you asked me about his comments about they let the straitjacket off. It kind of rolls into the same thing. Jalen's there to win. And no matter what you do, he wins a Super Bowl. You can sit there and say, oh, well, it was all Saquon Barkley. It was all this. It was all the defense. It was all that. You can say that. You can absolutely say that for today, tomorrow, and maybe the next couple of years. But guess what? In the long run, it's going to say Jalen Hurts, QB1, Philadelphia Eagles, if they win the Super Bowl this year, gets a monkey off his back that I think you have. Even listen, haters are going to hate. They're always going to say something. They're always going to have a reason why they were right. There's a lot more people out there who want to be right more than who want to win a championship. I'd rather be dead wrong and stroll down Broad Street than the other way around.
I agree.
So I have two more questions for you because I know you have to get rolling. Mm-hmm. The first question is, do you think there's a concern for the offensive line? Because you brought up the offensive line was a key piece to this Super Bowl. Do you have any concerns about Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens' injuries come Super Bowl Sunday?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to be somewhat concerned. We were concerned. Let's be honest. We were all feeling super confident up until the 24 hours before the NFC Championship game because of the Cam Jurgens. And, it's a stat that's out there. Cam Jurgens and Jason Kelce, the only two centers in Jalen Hurts' career that he worked with in the NFL. Now, Landon Dickerson was a top flight center coming out of Alabama, and a lot of us, including myself, because remember when they drafted him, you guys, we were working together at that point. I was one of the few people who were excited about that because of the injury aspect of Landon Dickerson. But I thought he was the heir apparent center before Cam Jurgens was. Mm-hmm. So I guess they found out he's doing really good at guard. Let's leave him at guard. We have this Cam Jurgens. We can do that. So, yeah, there has to be some worry. But I'll take an 80% Cam any day of the week over most. Listen, you got Chris Jones. You got a really stout Chiefs defensive line that's going to wreak havoc in there. So, you need these guys at 100%. The fact that they didn't sit him for the whole NFC Championship game with Cam, the fact that it's been quiet and so far, and so I'd imagine that Cam their injuries are enough that they're going to be able to play through. So hopefully it's enough that they can, you have to push off with your knee. Landon was doing that even when he was hurt. Cam's back. You had Frankie Louvu who was doing, WWE type moves over the line 4 or 5 times, literally landing on Cam's back. They had to literally find out. There's a rule that probably none of us on this channel here, or most people knew, that if they kept it up, they were just going to award the touchdown, which it makes sense if you think about it in the long run. But he kept landing on his back. And he just stayed out there. And to the point is, I guess hosted on Football Stories the other day, and they played a clip, an interview that Al Thompson did with Cam, and he didn't even hear the ref make that announcement. And he's as close to the ref as anybody else in that stadium is. He didn't even know that because like Al Thompson asked, what did you think when they said if you keep doing this, they're going to award the touchdown? And he goes, I didn't even hear him say that. That's how locked in this team is. That's how locked in this team is to win. That announcement made over a PA system with a ref who's probably about 5 yards away from him. He didn't even hear it when everybody, the 40,000 plus in the stadium did, plus all the millions and millions watching at home.
And you know, Ed Hockley during that, and I know a lot of people have said this, when he was making that announcement, it felt like the teacher saying, now, if you keep that up, you're going to go to
exactly what it sounded like.
Yeah. So, final thing. So this is kind of obvious. I want to get your prediction for the game, both for the score and who's going to win, and possible Super Bowl MVP.
Well, I mean, the MVP, unfortunately, to me, is such a joke anymore. If the Chiefs win, 99.9% chance Patrick Mahomes wins MVP. Even if Jason or Travis Kelce scores 19 touchdowns, it'll still somehow fall into Patrick Mahomes' hands.
Right.
But the Eagles, I mean, you probably go two different ways. You can go Jalen if it ends up being a game. Say it was just a complete carbon copy of the NFC Championship game. It's going to be tough between Saquon and Jalen to give it up. But I always feel like the quarterback's going to get leaned to a little bit more just because that's always a QB award for the most part.
Right.
Unless, some weird way they win.
Well, even in that one Patriots Super Bowl win, when it was the corner who picked it off to end the game, and they still gave the Super Bowl MVP to Tom Brady. I'm like,
yeah,
I think you realize that Tom could have lost that, right?
Yeah. The only time they really did it the right way is I believe when Peyton Manning won his last Super Bowl with the Broncos, and then that was, Peyton wasn't the same player he was at that point, and I think they awarded it to, I forget, it was one of the defensive players at that point, which is not something they often do. So that was one of the few times that you really see. But I can see going either Saquon or Jalen, depending on how the game plays out. But if it played out the same way the NFC Championship game, it's kind of cut down the middle on that one. And again, I probably lean towards QB1 if I'm placing a couple shillings on it. But listen, this game, the Eagles are built for this game. They are built better than they were in 2022 in my eyes. And I think the Chiefs are about the same as they were in 2022. Like nothing majorly different. But again, it's that it factor that keeps you can't go into prevent. You can't be up 2 scores, 3 scores on this team and go to prevent defense. You've got to keep pounding the ball. This is the time where you're not going to slide and try to run out the clock. You're going to run and get over the line and get 7 more points, get 7 more points, get 7 more points as quickly and as often as you can, because you can't ever give Patrick Mahomes a chance. He has the it factor. Love him or hate him, annoyed by him, annoyed by how the refs seemingly give him these, phantom pretty calls that nobody else gets, feel the way you want to feel about it, but he has the it factor. That's what makes an elite quarterback an elite quarterback. But before I'd be worried about Travis Kelce, but I don't know. I mean, I think our linebacker core can do a good job. Maybe they slide Cooper DeJean up. Maybe they slide Slay up at certain points depending on who's out there, because you got Xavier Worthy who's got a lot of speed behind him. So probably the young ones like Quintanamo Bay might be on them. Right. But Juju Schuster-Smith, however you say his name, backwards, I don't apologize, whatever. He's good, but he's not great. They have a lot of guys who have just not, learned to live up to the hype that they are. But again, when you have Patrick Mahomes, it's just that moment, that factor. That's why you have to be up on him. You can't give the ball back to him with, a minute and a half left, no timeouts, and not be up by more than 7 points.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So, do you have a score prediction for the Super Bowl?
I'll give you an early one. I'm not going to say I'm going to lay into this one. I'm not going to lay into this one, but I'm going to go early on score prediction. They're 28. to 20, your Philadelphia Eagles win. That's where I'm going with it.
Let's go.
I like that.
I like it, man.
Well, Al, I want to say thank you for joining us. I know you're a super busy dude. I'm glad you were able to kind of, get.
No, I'm glad to come on, guys. I miss hanging out with you. I miss talking with you. I'm sure we'll be doing this again. Hopefully, talking about the parade down Broad Street, and then the beauty part of this, as you guys know, I'm a huge baseball fan too. As soon as this is over and we could have come down from that Super Bowl high, hopefully we're gonna get right back up into that Phillies high. So there's a lot to talk about. So I'm sure I'll be back on.
Yeah,
you got it, dude.
Absolutely, man. So thank you to Al for coming on.
Thanks, Al.
Appreciate you, gentlemen. Have a great day. Go Birds.
Yep.
Go Birds.
So, James, I'm going to kind of like go into some of the questions that I gave Al to you. What do you think Jalen meant? First off, what was your impression of Jalen's performance in the NFC Championship game? And what do you think he meant by "Coach finally let me out of the straitjacket"?
Well, I'll answer the first one. The first thing I'll answer is that I think what Jalen had in this NFC Championship game, it was it just feels like every time when Jalen Hurts plays at NFC Championship games or even like SEC championships going back to when he was with Alabama or even Oklahoma, the lights are big for him. The lights are always huge for him. I think like when that light comes on, like he starts to play out to be what he can be. So for me, I was really astonished about it was that even like the last couple games when Jalen Hurts played to the capability he has, it's like he's like ready for prime time. I'm telling you, I think he's one guy that's ready for the prime time lights. I mean, there's nothing that phases him. Like he's not like he's not going to chicken out and say, "Oh, I'm here now, but I don't know how to handle it" and all that. Like he kind of reminds me of that Joe Montana kind of Joe Cool, like has like ice water in his veins kind of material, like because it's just like he's just one guy that just like when it comes to like the primetime lights and all that, he just turns it on a full swing. For me, it's just that he played these playoff games have been. I mean, I'm just so surprised about how many people keep on doubting him. But I think the reason why they doubt him is because they don't want to prove that they are wrong. Because like Connor Thomas brought it up on 97.5 a couple of days ago. He said they don't want to admit that they were wrong about what the circumstances is about the quarterback because they look at the quarterback and say, okay, like we got to do something to complain about or bitch and moan about because they don't know. Because like, they basically got nothing. Even like Zaffiri, even Al brought up about Cam Newton, like saying that, basically it's like a jealousy kind of thing that he's better than other quarterbacks that played in the league, like a Cam Newton and a Dan Orlovsky, or even like a Chase Daniel, or even the list goes on and on. Because the real part about it, I'm not sad about, but I'm kind of annoyed about it. At the same time, I should be laughing about it is because he's living up to expectations and he's just playing at an all-pro level. So that's the one thing I was really intrigued about in this postseason is that like he has been a real good factor, and it's going to continue into the Super Bowl actually next week or so.
So the reason why I've always been a Jalen Hurts fan, and I've always been probably one of his biggest supporters, no matter how other people want to perceive him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing: is Jalen is not an ego-driven quarterback. He's just not. The guy doesn't do things for Jalen Hurts. He does things for the Philadelphia Eagles. So if the game deems him to have 120 yards and a touchdown with 40 rushing yards and 2 tush-push touchdowns, then and have Saquon carry the day and the defense carry the day because they're doing it, then he's going to let that happen. He's going to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. If he's sitting there going, for everyone who's like, well, they need to score more and Jalen Hurts needs to throw more and they need to blow out teams worse than they are, and too many close games with bad teams. And the first thing I'm thinking is, why that they're not scoring more? Because they are one of the leading teams in the league that have had more than 10 have had 10 play plus drives.
Yeah.
So they take the clock and they drain it. They
Yeah.
take the opposing offense out of the equation, because if Jalen Hurts does back to back, now with Saquon, you always have the home run.
Yeah.
It's like the first play from scrimmage for the Eagles in the NFC Championship game.
Well,
That that that's a good thing to have, but
well,
you
that
don't need it all the time.
you know it's funny since Al brought up a baseball reference. It's kind of like Kyle Schwarber hitting a leadoff home run every time.
Exactly. Great comparison. Like, so the Commanders had an 18 play drive,
Yeah.
and then the Eagles had a 1 play for a touchdown. Now, that defense is probably like, really, Saquon? You could like slide, like, we get it. You're good, but we just were out there for 20 minutes, man. Give us a damn chance to get a Gatorade or something. Go to
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah,
Like,
go to
something.
break. Go to
Right.
break or something. Yeah, to allude to your point about the straight jacket thing, I think it was basically that he was trying to not troll the media, but at the same time try to not tell them anything at the same time. Because remember, there was a game against Pittsburgh, and then he was like, I guess it was the game during that AJ Brown saga, and he was like, "Well, was that all you guys wanted to? Is this what you guys wanted to see?" Like basically, not like an fu to the media, like saying, but he's saying like basically
Are you
just
happy
like,
now?
are you happy now that I've got to
Yeah.
the Super Bowl again? I mean, what more do I need to do to prove my point, basically?
Here's the thing. The quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles position,
Hmm.
the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles in this city has always been highly scrutinized.
Right.
But Jalen, unlike other quarterbacks that have played for the Eagles, doesn't let it kind of bother him quite as much. Like,
He's just
yeah,
locked in, man.
he'll take his pokes and his jabs, but like the media tries to be like, well, Jalen, what's your relationship with the coach like? Or Jalen, what's your relationship with AJ Brown like? Is there
They're looking for crap. They're looking for crap.
right?
They're just
And
like,
and for Jalen, he's like, we're winning. That's all I care about.
next question. You know,
Next
even
question.
even yesterday, even in the one of his press conference, like not, you know, I gotta admit, like when he was like talking like low key like that before, I said to myself, why is he not saying anything? But then I start to realize, I see what you mean now. Because like you think about the clickbait stuff that's been going on in the day and age of sports, it's
Yep.
like he's not giving you anything. It's kind of like he's like Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing, I know nothing.
And you don't put it this way. He proves it because he'll throw a tidbit out there like, Coach let me out of my straitjacket. And what
Right.
did the media do? They jumped all over it. They took
Exactly.
he had a 15-minute press conference, and out of that 15-minute press conference, the only thing anyone really took out was Coach letting me out of that straitjacket. Like, okay, dude, like, he basically is giving you what you want and
Bullets and
doesn't
material.
care. Right. He's like, okay, I'll throw you guys a bone just to leave me alone.
Yeah,
Because here's
exactly.
here's the bottom line. This is a guy that has brought his team back to the Super Bowl has brought his team to the Super Bowl 2 times in 3 years. No one else in the NFC, no one else in the NFL other than Patrick Mahomes has gone back to the Super Bowl after losing in the last 25 years. So keep that perspective in mind. This is a quarterback that, he doesn't sit there and like rest on his laurels with this team. So I think in the NFC Championship game, what he meant by, Coach let me out of the straitjacket is the defense posed a threat to Saquon.
Yeah,
And I saw an opportunity or opportunities to take advantage of that defense, and I did so.
right,
And and the coach let me, meaning the coach called the plays to let Jalen thrive.
right.
Sometimes as a coach, if the run game's working and you want to control the clock, you just keep running the ball. But because the defense and everybody was doing what they were doing, coach was like, we're up by 14 or 13. Like, go ahead, Jalen, throw it up.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think he meant by that.
All right. Yeah, you're right on point about this too, Joe. Because like you think about those couple drives in the beginning of the quarter, like the Saquon touchdown, and right then and there they scored another touchdown. It was just like basically the one thing I was really astounded about. It was just like that's how you beat teams. I mean, that's gonna probably what happen. That's what's gonna happen in the Super Bowl too. Because once you get on them early, like you did with Washington and you did with other teams like Green Bay, even like the Rams, obviously, in the snowball phase too, I always call it. The one thing I was really intrigued about too is that if you get on the Chiefs defense early, like a 14-6 lead, 14-7 lead, without even blinking, they're going to be like, we can't stop them, and that's going to be the big thing. That's going to be the biggest key to take out of it. If they, because like everybody's been harping about, even like a hardcore for all says, Chiefs defense is better in my opinion, but if you give the Eagles offense some time to do whatever they can to make Spagnuolo to shake his head and scratch his head. I mean, they got the tools to do it. I mean, still got to stop Saquon. You still got to stop AJ. You still got to stop. You guys still got to stop Devontae. Hell, you even got to stop Dallas Goedert too. I mean, you got to stop. You got to stop all these players. I mean, even like Jalen Hurts too. I mean, don't be surprised Jalen Hurts will run the ball a lot too. I mean, you got to stop the offense from attacking. It's like the Steve Monorano thing. If you want to win the game or something like that, or you want to just try to control the clock, you got to stop them. I mean, but the thing about it too is that the Eagles are just one of those teams that can't be stopped right now, and I think it's going to take us to another Super Bowl. I mean, or win us another Super Bowl.
Yeah, here's the thing, and this is where I'll kind of push back against that comment. So the Chiefs defense is good, don't get me wrong. And they have Steve Spagnuolo, and he's a great defensive coordinator.
Right.
But this is a different animal. With the Eagles defense, first off, our defense is a lot better than it was in 22. That's number one. Number two, we have a better defensive coordinator than we had in 2022. He's not checked out. No. Now, I know a lot of people, and I guess I'll pose this question now, but Kellen Moore is the front runner for the Saints job. Right. Now, the Super Bowl is in New Orleans. This is a very similar, situation to when we went in 2022 and Jonathan Gannon got offered the head coaching job for the Cardinals, and the game was in Arizona. Well, here's the difference. This is what I would say the difference is. Kellen Moore is different than Jonathan Gannon for two reasons. Number one, it makes more sense that if he goes to New Orleans, he has the pedigree to be able to say, I won a Super Bowl, not just show up in a Super Bowl. See, Jonathan Gannon can just say, I had a Super Bowl appearance. Good for you. But that doesn't mean much of anything. There are a lot of coaches that have had Super Bowl appearances and haven't gotten the job done.
Right.
My point that I'm trying to get at is the second part of that is I don't think Jalen or Nick Sirianni is going to let Kellen, check out.
Right.
Even if he wanted to.
Right.
I think that both of them are locked in and they know the playbook so well. And again, I go back to that perspective that Jalen is the field general because he understands the playbook now so much so that he'll check out of original plays and go into better plays or go into plays he feels like will be more effective. So my question to you, James, I guess, kind of skipping ahead, what's your impression of the Kellen Moore potential going to being hired by the Saints?
Yeah, before we go any further, I want to we can get into the question that Mitchkovsky joins us too. He says, "Where would you guys rank Jalen Hurts in the NFC?" I think I'll answer that. I'll answer your question first, and we'll get back to Mitch's question too. So for Kellen Moore, this is probably something that I don't think it's going to be anything in like the same circumstance as Jonathan Gannon, because Jonathan Gannon, just like you said, like he wanted the experience of the Super Bowl, but not win it. I mean, for Kellen, it's like, I mean, I think there's probably a reason why, like a Mike McCarthy. There's a reason why, like other coaches decided, like, yeah, like I don't think. I mean, they probably had to admit too is that like the Saints are just going to be a complete crapshoot for the next couple of years or so.
Yeah.
So I mean, if Kellen Moore gets that job, I mean that'll be great that he got a coaching position. But I mean, he'd probably say, I mean, if he wanted to make his point about it now, and make his point about becoming the new head coach of the Saints, he probably would have made his decision by now. But I mean, the way I look at it too, Joe, I think it's I mean, look, if he wants to have that job, I mean, it's his the ball's in his court and all that. But I was really I'm not annoyed about it, because like he actually is letting the Eagles know that he is like a candidate for that coaching position, like unlike Jonathan Gannon did back in that year after that Super Bowl, and not telling like the NFL about it or even the Eagles about it. And it's just like, I mean, the one thing, I mean, I wouldn't be annoyed about it if Kellen Moore does get that job. It will be great to know that he got a head coaching job. For me, though, if the Eagles do go down this route and he becomes the new head coach for the Saints, I would look at either like Frank Reich to come back as the offensive coordinator. That would be something that maybe I would look into, because me and my dad both agree. I think Frank Reich will be a good opportunity to come back. This will be a good opportunity to bring back Frank Reich if Kellen goes down that road to go to New Orleans.
And that'll be a conversation we could definitely have going forward into the offseason. Because there are definitely some candidates that I would actually want to throw out there. But going back to Mitch's question, where would you rank Jalen Hurts in the NFC as far as quarterbacks?
He's up there. He's up there, like with all. I mean, obviously the talent that he has is like making him one of the reasons why one of the best in the league. I mean, I'm not gonna put him up there with. I might have to put him maybe like 3, probably right behind Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. The reason why I didn't say Lamar Jackson is because Lamar Jackson in playoff games, it just like looks like it's not that he plays Lamar Jackson to the playoff standard, but for me, it's like I think the 3 quarterbacks you got right now, I would say Patrick Mahomes, because of the Super Bowls and all the stuff that he has done for the team and all that. I would probably put him at 2 or 3, either between Josh Allen or ahead of Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'm with you in that, and I've been that way for a while now. I remember saying back in 2022, and I know that he was the runner-up for MVP, and he didn't have that much of a statistical season, last year and this year. But there's a reason why he's meeting Patrick Mahomes for the second time in 3 years.
Right.
Like, these 2 quarterbacks, respectfully, are 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league. You may not like that statement, but the fact of the matter is, it's not an accident. It's not a coincidence that these 2 quarterbacks are leading their teams, because it's more than just one player.
Right.
But it takes that quarterback to be able to galvanize that locker room in order to get their team to the promised land.
Right.
And at least, regardless of what happens a week from tomorrow, you got to say at least Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts have gotten their teams in position to get to the promised land, to raising the Lombardi Trophy. That's at least saying something. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, like, I've heard these names, and yet I've said Josh Allen hasn't made the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson hasn't made the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow made a Super Bowl and lost. And now you're talking, and hasn't made it back since. And now you're talking about a guy in Jalen Hurts that's made it back twice in 3 years.
Yep.
That isn't anything to sneeze at.
That isn't fluky, man. I do agree. I do agree. I mean, you're absolutely right on point about this too, because you think about the greatness that they have in the NFL right now, if you go back to a Super Bowl in the first 3 years, you're already up to like high standards about being up there with greatness. I mean, him winning a Super Bowl will just show him how great he is as an Eagle. But also, too, if you look down on it, it's just that even like the Eagles teams that they had going back for years. I mean, you talk about the Nick Foles years, and also you think about the Donovan years, and even like Randall and all that too.
Yep.
I mean, just like getting back to a Super Bowl is the hardest thing about it. Obviously, winning it is hard too, but getting back there in 3 years, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
No, it is. It absolutely is. And for that, that's why I put him. I said this in 22, and I'll say this again in 25. It's him and Patrick Mahomes, and then everybody else.
Yeah,
And it's because of it's not the stats. You can analyze and hyperanalyze all stats you want, but it's about where you take your team, the legacy that you leave for your team. You talk about it a minute ago, James. If Jalen wins this Super Bowl,
right,
and again, we said it with Al,
mm-hmm.
this team's not going anywhere
Right.
for the most part. This nucleus of this team isn't going anywhere. Yes, it's difficult to get back to a Super Bowl, but this team has proven that it's possible. In 3 years, you go to 2 Super Bowls. It's if you're not the Chiefs or the Patriots, it's unheard of.
Right,
And so, like, ask the Detroit Lions
right,
that have never been to a Super Bowl. Ask the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions before the playoffs started were quote unquote better than the Philadelphia Eagles in record and quote unquote better than the Philadelphia Eagles statistically. Okay,
right.
but guess what? Both haven't yet gotten to a Super Bowl in their franchise history.
Yep.
So I don't want to hear it. Like for me, it's and we'll get into this a little bit at another point in time, but the legacy that Jalen will have if he wins this one, there's a more of a possibility that this could switch and shift from a Chiefs dynasty, and I know how Eagles fans might feel about me saying this. This could shift from a Chiefs dynasty to an Eagles dynasty.
Love it.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that because they are proving it from top to bottom. They have bought into the system.
Yep.
And I go back to saying something I said last week is that this team's technically doing it with one arm tied behind their back.
Yep.
And they're doing it. Bradbury is like in, Sri Lanka somewhere.
In limbo.
Right. You have Bryce Huff, who's got his head in the clouds.
Yeah.
Both guys are making a lot of money.
Bryce Huff is huffing and puffing on that sideline.
Can't blow anybody's house down. That's exactly right.
Exactly right.
So that's the thing is that this team can't you can't forgo the idea that this team is a dynasty waiting to happen with what's ahead of them. And so I got to ask, and I asked this to Al.
Yep.
What's the difference this time around against the Chiefs in your mind? What do you think is going to be the difference now in comparison to 22 that's going to make the difference for the Eagles to go over the top and win the Lombardi Trophy?
Well, I mean, you think about the Chiefs that they had a couple years ago. I mean, they got all that talent that they had, obviously. For me, it's just that okay. Let's like try to think about this and something that I would think of. I mean, this is something that I really found astounding more than anything about that too. And even before I get my point in, Mitch Kowski says, "Can I get an INT from Guantanamo Bay, aka Quinyon Mitchell, on this in the Super Bowl? That would be nice too, Mitch. I would love it. I would love to see Quinyon Mitchell.
If he did that, he would have had an interception in 3 straight games."
And clutch
moments when it matters the most. Understand, he didn't have much of any interceptions in the regular season, so to get 3, potentially 3 in back-to-back weeks.
Oh yeah.
Oof. It'll solidify his it'll
success.
solidify him going forward for sure.
Well, here's the other thing too about that. Like that 27 jersey, I mean, that's actually good luck because like someone brought up a couple days ago, I think, and that I remember Malcolm Jenkins, yeah, and also Quinyon Mitchell getting that jersey. It's just like, look, I'm a jersey like nut, I'm much like crazy about like jersey numbers and X, Y, and Z. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if Quinyon Mitchell gets a clutch interception that seals the game or gets them, I mean, that's the only thing that happened. That's back to my point here, that a couple years ago when they took on Kansas City in the Super Bowl, they couldn't stop them. I mean, the only thing they had to do was just look for one stop, like they did in Super Bowl 52 with Tom Brady. They looked for one stop, they stripped Brady, and we won, and we were world champions after that. The only thing they have to do, this is the one thing you have to do. They've been doing it all season. You got to make Patrick Mahomes very uncomfortable, and you got to stop him at any chance you got. You got to stop him at any chance, because if you get the opportunity to do so, and also, he says, I'll show you the comment after that. But if you put pressure on Mahomes and make him have to run out of the pocket, also or even like strip him, or even like cause him to throw turnovers, that's going to be a big thing too. Because I'm not concerned about their offensive weapons. I mean, you think about it, they got Xavier Worthy, that's a rookie. You got a 40-year-old DeAndre Hopkins, that could be his last chance to probably see a Super Bowl, because obviously he's been around for so many years. And Travis Kelce. I mean, that's about it. They don't. I mean, the only two players they got that are like, I guess you can call it, dare I say, threats, but they are. It's just Travis Kelce and maybe Xavier Worthy. But Xavier Worthy still hasn't. I mean, like, people are still thinking that. I mean, down the road he'll be a great quarterback down the road in the league, but at the same time, I mean, you still got to find a way to like you said, you got to put pressure on Mahomes. You got to find a way, and you got to put a lot of pressure. I mean, Fangio's done that all year long. You got to look for one stop, and if it's only one stop that gets you a Super Bowl, hey, look, Vic Fangio will be a genius forever. I mean, I want to say he's up there with Buddy Ryan or Jim Johnson, but I got to give him a ton of credit for what he's done with this team on this defensive front.
In a quick
instant, yeah, a quick season, yeah, right.
Because it was like we went from the bedlam of despair with Matt Patricia and Sean Desai,
pencil
elite.
Yeah.
So what's the comment there?
Yeah. It's so Mitch Kowski says, I need to get a Quinyon Mitchell or Matvey Michkov jersey too. So if you if you've seen our show a couple weeks ago, we're trying to get Quinyon Mitchell.
You need anything that's got Mitchell. I'm going to get you a Freddie Mitchell jersey.
Well, I mean, I was going to say I was going to break Mitch's balls about it too. I said, I think you got traded to Calgary because he looks like Joel Farabee, but I guess it's not going to. I guess that's another story for another day, though. Another time, but yeah. Yeah, but back to Quinyon Mitchell, though. The 3 interceptions that he had in those clutch moments, it's just that he's made for this. I mean, it's the same thing with Cooper DeJean and 4 for 26. I am good with that. He says 4 for, like, basically Freddie Mitchell.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so
all right, let's get back on track.
Here's my thing is that the difference with this game in comparison to 22 is the learning curve. Like, that team in 22, I felt like was right there at the doorstep, especially at halftime, because Mahomes was shooken up. He was kind of hurt.
Yeah.
The Eagles were getting the ball out of half. So it felt like, this could be it. You needed to put your foot down on their throat.
Right.
And it didn't feel like, at the time, it didn't feel like they could do it.
Right.
Now, there's so many weapons that the Eagles have and Jalen has at their disposal that it feels like the Chiefs' defense is going to be the turning point. If the defense for the Chiefs can't hold, off this offense with whatever it's going to pull out, I honestly think that the Chiefs are going to be in for a rough Super Bowl
Yeah,
because Patrick Mahomes is good. He's great. But
fantastic.
I feel as though he has to put, and this was prevalent in 22. It felt like he has to put the team on his back. He
Mhm.
has to put the Superman cape on.
Right.
Now, look, Patrick Mahomes doesn't mind putting the cape on, but if you're doing it so much, eventually you're going to run into kryptonite.
Yeah.
And so my feeling is that Patrick Mahomes' kryptonite is going to be a guy by the name of Jalen Carter.
Ooh.
This is a guy who I feel like is going to hunt.
I love it, man.
And this is a guy that Chiefs offensive line is not the greatest offensive line. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Jalex Hunt, and dare I say Brandon Graham
Ooh.
going to go into this and hunt for Mr. Mahomes. And
Yep.
look, I think Mahomes, it's like you said, you got to get him off his spot. You got to make him uncomfortable. The way that you make him uncomfortable is you make him feel you.
Yep.
You make him feel you in the pocket. Like you make him think that he's got to be looking over his shoulder and not looking down the field. That's going to be the difference. How much pressure they can put on the Patrick Mahomes. And if it can look like what it did in 22,
Mhm.
and then the only difference being this year, step on their necks when you have the opportunity.
You make a very good point, Joe. I mean, the one thing I completely forgot about that injury that he caused, that the Eagles actually defense did, is that they made him like come out of game limping, you know. But the one thing I was really that's the one thing you have to do is that like once you get him, I mean, I want to say the words take him out of the game, but you have to get him out of his A game a little bit.
Right.
And Vic Fangio has done an admirable job with that. I mean, the way he's done with Jalen Carter, with the and also, even like Brandon Graham, can you imagine Brandon Graham coming back for this Super Bowl, man? I mean, that is like a perfect script ending. That's like Miracle on Ice. It's
Yeah.
Hoosiers. It's like all these sports movies. I mean, you can actually write the script. You can probably call Vince Papelli and say, "Hey, buddy, we need to come back and do another Invincible movie. This time with the Philadelphia Eagles that we have." But all joking aside, by the way, it's Vince Papelli, not Vince Papelli's birthday. It's Mark Wahlberg's birthday, Cooper DeJean, and Saquon Barkley, all birthdays on that same day of Super Bowl 59. So it's gonna
And I know you said you're a jersey and a numbers guy.
Yep.
Cooper and Saquon, I don't know if you heard this.
Equal
When
59. Yep.
they add their jersey numbers up, it's to 59. And it's Super Bowl 59, so the numbers kind of line up. But
yes, sir.
The other part of this is
now you're talking, Mitch. Now, can I get a Brian Mitchell jersey? At least he didn't say Freddie Mitchell. I mean, I gotta give him credit on that. No, but all joking aside, the one guy I want to see too is to become a real good tone setter too. Is that Nolan Smith? I mean, I've been big on Nolan Smith going back to when he was with Georgia. I mean, it's a shame that Kobe Dean ain't going to be there because he's one of my guys. I like number 17. I know. So believe it or not, hey, look, there's a lot of good players that wore that number 3. Hey, look, maybe Nolan Smith probably becomes one of those guys in Eagles history that gets a strip sack too, along the way with Jalen Carter too.
Now, here's the interesting thing. So someone brought this up, and this kind of leads me into my next question.
Sure.
Someone brought this up. So Brandon Graham comes back, and he plays in the Super Bowl. Can you imagine if the Super Bowl comes down to Brandon Graham strips Patrick Mahomes and the Eagles win the Super Bowl? Brandon Graham would have stripped both Tom Brady to win that Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes, two of the greatest quarterbacks to do it in Super Bowls.
Wow.
I don't want to lose BG, but yeah, I would ride off into the sunset on the
Valley. Right.
I would be like, yeah, I'm done. Like I've owned
go out with a bang, right?
Great quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm done. I'm good.
Well,
From being criticized that we should have gone with Earl Thomas over him, from being criticized that he shouldn't be a starting linebacker or a defensive lineman,
you know,
to that,
you,
it's just like, whoo.
you know what the amazing thing too about it too is like I was watching that America's game a couple nights ago when it was on TV, and when I hear Brandon Graham, it's just like, damn, I just wish he could. I wish he was only 5 years instead of 10 years, man.
Yeah.
Because if it was only in his fifth year, I would have been like, okay, like he's just becoming one step closer to be greatness. I mean, I'm gonna feel very nostalgic if this is gonna be one of his last rides. And if he goes out with a Super Bowl, if he goes out on top, man, that's a perfect way to go out, man.
Yeah. And this kind of leads me into my next question. I brought this up before the show. The Eagles, so the Chiefs are pursuing history.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, if they were to win on Sunday, they'd be the first team in the NFL to three-peat in 3 consecutive Super Bowls.
Right.
The last team to do that in sports was the Lakers, I believe.
Right.
Here's my thing. The Eagles have a way to make history too.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one person on WIP this week that brought it up and it kind of expounded on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had thought about it myself this week. If the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and I'm going to go and say my thought first, and then I'm going to expound on it from the gentleman's thought that called in the WIP. If the Eagles win this Super Bowl, the Eagles would have been the only team to beat 2 of the greatest quarterbacks, 2 of the most recent dynasties in the NFL.
Right.
The Patriots with Brady and the Chiefs with Mahomes. They would have been the only team to do that. But it goes deeper than that. The Eagles would also, if they were to win Sunday, they'd be the only team in the NFL to beat 3 dynasties, 3 of the top 5 coaches in NFL history in a championship game. They
Yep.
would have beat the Packers back in the day, and again, Belichick, and again, Andy Reid.
Wow.
That is, listen, there is history to be made about this team this time around. And there's also a little bit of Philadelphia sports and Philadelphia Eagles pride at stake, because this team isn't just proving that they're here just to be here. And all the players have said this at the end of the NFC Championship game. All the players have said this. We're not just going to be there. We're going to take what's ours.
Right.
And I love that messaging. We're
Mhm.
not going there just to be there. We're going to win.
Yep.
We're going to win that game. This is the thing. History could be made on either front next Sunday.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to the game in many different ways, but now that puts a bigger emphasis on the game, that historical measure.
Mhm.
So, James, before we get going, I want to just say, before we're not going to do our predictions today.
Okay.
We're going to save that for next week. I
Sounds
want
good.
everybody that's watching to tune in next week. The eve of the Super Bowl, I want you guys to get a big cup of coffee, scramble a bunch of eggs, get bacon, hash browns, whatever you want. Breakfast with the boys is going to go super. We're going to have a super show before the Super Bowl. So join us next Saturday morning where we will have plenty of guests to talk to that will be there, that will be able to break down the Eagles game and the Super Bowl and give their predictions of who they think is going to win and what they think is going to happen. I want to thank Zaffiri for joining us this morning. I want to thank you, James, for being an awesome producer. I want to thank everyone for checking in on the comments. Thank you for joining us. Please join us next Saturday. It's going to be epic. I can promise you that.
It is going to be epic.
We are going to get you ready for Super Bowl Sunday. We are going to get you ready for Super Bowl 59. And most of all, we are going to get you ready for an Eagles Super Bowl championship. Another one to add to the collection.
Let's go.
For James Scorza, Al Zaffiri, I'm Joe Marks. This is the Patterson Ave Sports Show. Have a good weekend, Philly, and go Birds.
Go Birds. We'll see you next week.